Welcome back. This video will explain how to create reports and print statements in the Receivables module. Depending upon your security settings and privilege set, you may not have access to the Receivables module. If you do not see the Receivables button right here, that means that you do not have access, and you may want to check with your administrator to make sure that you have rights to look at the Receivables module, but let's assume that you do right now. I'm going to click the Receivables button here under the Invoicing portal, which takes me to this Receivables screen. Now on the screen, I'm currently showing all invoices for Eleanor Evans, but you may see a larger set. For example, if I were to show all invoices up here, then I'd see a much larger group of records. But this just shows me any balances or credits due and some basic history for that particular patient. In the lower left, I can click this green button here to find all balances, to find all credits. I can click this button to enter statement comments. The basic receipt has the ability to enter comments in this area, and then in-house private notes that are not printed on any agreement are available from this screen. We can also preview or print a number 10 or number 9 envelope. Let's take a quick look at that. As I zoom in, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the assigned office location for that invoice is printed in the upper left, and the patient name is printed in the address area. In a similar way, the assigned office location is printed in the address area for the number 9 return envelope, and the patient name and monogram is printed in the upper left. Now, as you probably know, a number 9 fits inside a number 10. You put a stamp on that and put that inside the statement envelope, and that will make it a little bit easier for the patient to return a check or something like that to you. So that's what's happening down here, either preview or print. As we look over to the side here, we have some different options. We can, let's take a look here, choose to send that to Mrs. Evans or Ms. or Mr., the first name, or we can put in a greeting, a nickname, or a third party there. We can include the patient company if there is a company on the envelope, and we can also include their country, or we can include a printed date on the statement if desired. We can also see at the bottom here, this is how, for example, when I click Mrs. up here, it changes it to Mrs. Eleanor Evans. So it's kind of a preview of how that will look. As we go down, we can put in additional addresses right from the receivables now, as opposed to having to go back home. And you can put those addresses in here and rank them. Number 1 is going to be what's on the envelope and the statement. So if you want to add an additional address, be sure to rank that higher, or number 1 as opposed to number 2 of the older address. We can also enter guarantor information from this area now, either as a primary or secondary, and you can decide whether or not to send the statement to that guarantor or not. We have a statement history after you print. For example, you may be allowing a payment plan for a given invoice or patient, and you may have a series of events here, historical times that you've sent a statement to that particular patient, and be able to track the date and when you did that. We also have a collections option area here, and this will allow us to say that this invoice is in collections, and whether or not you want to automatically omit all statements that are in collections, so you don't bother sending a statement to those. You may deal with them in a different way. We have aging and payment options. This is a little bit confusing, but we can age an invoice either based on the invoice date, or we can age based on the next payment due date. Well, why would you do that? Because if you're going to allow a payment plan, let's check that box for example, we may have allowed the patient to pay over 9 or 12 months, and we don't necessarily want the aging to be calculated based on the invoice date in that case. Otherwise, after 6 months, it will look like the patient is way behind, when in fact their next payment due date may be next month. So you can decide whether or not you want to age that based on whether or not you're allowing a payment plan. You can put in a payment plan and just say the patient can pay $300 a month for the next 10 months or whatever the amount is. And again, you have a next payment due date here. You can quickly add 30 days or the beginning of this month or next month right there. And you can also mark that for recurring billing so that you can easily find all your recurring billing statements here with the click of a button there. So we can see the aging base date is based on a date that I put in here, or I can do it based on the date of the invoice. We see the aging status also at the bottom there. We have some invoice details here, very similar to the looking back in the sales screen here. We can see the date that the invoice was created, modified, and some other items there. And then finally down here at the bottom, we have some other options, such as when I pull up a report for the receivables report, I may only want to find all patients who have a balance greater than $0. Or I may want to also include in the report credits. And that would include not balances that are 0, but anything greater than 0 or less than 0. And finally, I can hide the aging status on the statements. I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. So we'll close that and take a look at this middle section here, and this is where the powerful part of the Receivables module is located. In the upper middle section, we can summarize our receivables report by the aging status, current, 30, 60, 90, etc. We can categorize them by the assigned office, clinician, by month, the payer name, which would be Blue Cross Blue Shield or some other insurance company, a very specific detailed payer name there, or the payer type, which would be a general category such as private pay, insurance, Medicare. So you can run a report. I'll show you a report based on aging right now. You can run the report based on a number of different categories here. I can also preview or print statements, and I'll show you that in a moment. So let's start by previewing this report. Now, it will take a while to build the report. In this case, we have almost 4,000 invoices in the system, and it's updating a lot of information, so it does take a little while. But now we can see an intermediate screen, and this screen will allow you to just simply continue by clicking the button in the upper right, or we can narrow things down, and I'd like to explain that for you real quick. Let's say you only want invoices dated before a particular date. So you can put that date in there, or you could put a range, 1.6. It will fill that in the rest for me. And that means anything from January 1st to the end of June in this case. So I could say, give me a date range of invoices. We can also say, just give me private pay or any number of other different payer types. We can put in a status. We can put in just a particular office. If you want to send statements, for example, or view a report for just one office location, you could do that. Now, keep in mind, you can also run a report based on and have it automatically subcategorize your offices, but you may only want one for some reason, and the same way you can do that for each clinician. I can put in a range of invoice numbers, anything with a total charge of greater than $890. It just goes on and on. You can really narrow down what you want to do here. Your balance due is automatically going to find greater than 0, but you may say, I only want those greater than another amount. And also I could put in just a particular clinician name. Now, after I've done that, I can click Add a New Request down here and add additional information for a second request. For example, if I wanted to find private pay and Medicaid or something, then I can do that separately. But generally, with all that said, you're just going to click Continue. And when you do that, it takes a while then to find all that information, and then it's going to subcategorize all of that. And here we see all of our current, and then our 30 and our 60 and our 90 and all those kind of things there. So this is going to give us a little bit different than what, let's zoom in so you can see it better, maybe a little bit different than what you're used to. So most receivable reports look a little bit different than this, but we're going to see our invoice number, date, patient name, the status of the invoice. I just have so many of them set to completed, but yours may say something other than that. The total amount of the invoice, the total paid, the balance due, the last amount, payment amount that was received, and the last date of that receipt, and then finally an aging status. At the very end, I can grab this little slider bar and go all the way to the end, and then it'll show me a total of 28 pages, and I can see all the grand total for all the amounts that are due here. So I'm going to press Continue. No, I don't want to print that, but I could have if I wanted to. Let's do something a little bit different here. I'm going to say I want to do this by payer type, and I'm going to view the report. Again, it takes a little while to update a few things here, so please bear with me. And then I'm going to make a slight change. I'm going to say I only want invoices based greater than 9, which, as you can see when I leave the screen, it automatically adds the rest. That means from 10-1 forward. And again, let's actually do this. Let's just narrow it down to say I only want private pay whose invoices were greater than a particular date. Takes a little while to calculate all that. And so I'm going to have a shorter report. I think that other one was 24 pages long, and this one's only 6 pages long. So as you can see, it will narrow down your search results based on whatever it is that you ask it to do there. So let's just do one more here and say I want to do this by, let's just say month, and I don't even know what I'm going to get. Actually, let's not do that. Let's do pay your name and see what we get there. Again, waiting a little while, so thank you for bearing with me. And then we're going to just press continue in the upper right hand corner and not put in any other criteria. So here's the continue button, and we'll take a look, and it will subcategorize or arrange the report based on different payers here, as you can see. So that may have value to you. Just choose whichever method is important to you. And notice off to the right, even though it's subcategorizing by the payer themselves, not the payer type in this case, it's still showing me the aging status off to the far right here. So that's how you run a report, but let's look at the ability to preview or print statements. It's very similar. It takes a little while to pull all this up. I'm sorry that I can't make that faster for you. And once we've pulled up the report, we still have, the intermediate screen. We still have that ability to narrow it down. In this case, I don't want to print statements for people who are having Medicare or some insurance company, so I'm just going to narrow it down to private pay, press continue, and again, it still takes a little while. Could have done it for just one office location. And now it says, I've got way too many in here, but there are 3,876 invoices that reflect a balance due. Well, that's way too many. I need to figure out how to get my receivables updated. And in this case, I think what I've done is kind of messed with my data a little bit. Notice it's saying that a balance of 0 is now due. That's because I have some fractions in there and I've been messing around with my data, but you get the idea anyway. This will say the name of the practice will print up here. The patient name will print here. And this, if folded along the top black line here, will fit in a double windowed envelope. So that'll make it a little bit easier for you to mail that. And as we look down here, we see a little other information. Now we can have it automatically put your logo in the bottom, but we can't put your logo at the top because this area is kind of reserved for that double windowed envelope, if that makes sense. You'll also notice that the aging status is on here, and you may not want that to be there for some reason. So we can also, we can remove that, but we can also edit the text that's on here if you don't want that to be displayed that way. Now I'm presented, when I click continue, I'm presented with an option to either not print, which is what I'm going to choose, or I can print invoice or patient. Well, what the difference is that if I print invoice, let's say Mary Smith has 3 invoices that are open, that still have a balance on them. Well, it would print 3 separate invoices for her in that case. But if I click patient, then it would actually combine all open invoices for a given patient into as few as possible, generally 1, if they'll all fit onto that. And I'll show you how that looks in just a moment. So patient will combine all open invoices. Invoice will give you a separate piece of paper or invoice statement for each open invoice. So let's go back. I'm going to go back to the home screen. And I'm on Eleanor here. Let's just go right back to that receivables area and show you when I preview, I can preview a statement for all open invoices. And there's Eleanor's name at the top, but now I see 2 invoices combined into one statement essentially. So that generally is more efficient and gives the patient a better historical look at their balances. But you can also just print a separate invoice for each one of those open invoices, separate statement I should have said. And that gives you an idea of the 2 different options there. So again, the statement down here, you can, if you want to print just an individual one for Eleanor, and you don't want to go through all that previewing and all that sort of thing, you could just come down after going to the patient's screen and preview or print a separate invoice for each open, or in this case, just printing 1, or I can print a statement that includes all open invoices. So there's quite a bit to that. Hopefully you get an idea after playing around with it. And that's a good overview, though, of our Receivables module.